This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
There's a thin line between heroism and madness.
Here the line fades to nothing at all. This is a world of Capes and Lunatics.
And nothing is off limits.
Hey everyone, welcome to a special Capes and Lunatics episode. For those of you who listened a while back, you'd probably be familiar with my guest. Lilith is here this time, but everyone knows Lilith. Knows her, fears her. And anyway, our special guest tonight, Mr. Bryan Edward Hill. Last time it was for his Detective Comics run. This time we're going to be talking Titans episode 5 that just dropped today, that he was co-writer on, correct?
That's correct.
I was going to say, I saw two names. So, Lilith, what are we going to ask this gentleman about this?
Okay, since it was two writers, who was responsible for the sex scene?
Right to it.
Right to it.
That's funny. Well, you know, the way the show works, we sort of break all the stories together, and then sometimes different scenes will get assigned, but then we'll kind of go over each other's stuff too. So, I would say the grand majority of the episode is probably an equal combination of me and Gab, when all said and done. With input from the showrunners and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but weren't you saying I was like, oh, thank you for the two Dick Grayson fight scenes, or like, oh yeah, my episode has all the fight scenes.
It just sort of landed that way, I think, in the way the story was going, and I like writing fight scenes. I enjoy it, because it's just kind of fun to let it rip. So I was really glad when I saw it. Oh, we get some cool fights in this episode. It was very cold though when we were shooting, and you don't really plan on the winter when you're writing, but then when you get to the set and you're like, ooh, it's really cold out here for a lot of this stuff. So it was production was a little difficult, and that's largely my fault. But the fight just kind of landed on my watch, I guess.
But yeah, that was my other question. Is like, I know you weren't completely sure about the numbering of the episodes. Like, how much info do they give you? Like when they're like, okay, you're gonna write this episode in the middle here. So like, do they tell you it's coming beforehand, or how much do they give you?
It's funny when you're doing this stuff. It's kind of a fugue state, so it's hard to kind of think back to see how it all parsed itself out. Most of the time in TV, your episodes are broken down, and then they're assigned to different writers, kind of based on the showrunner's idea of who would do a decent job, with the stuff based on your work and all that. And that's kind of how the assignments kind of land, and it's generally poor form to campaign for one thing or another. I mean, that's the showrunner's responsibility, is to assign things to people as they see fit. So, you just kind of sit and you wait. And then, it's like Toy Story. The claw is moving on top of you, and the claw moves, and some get taken, some get saved. So you just sort of wait for that claw to kind of come down, and that's how it all sort of plays itself out.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if they were like, okay, so they just got away from the Doom Patrol. They probably don't tell you that much, right? There's just...
Well, is it not like a traditional writer's room? Because I'm assuming most of you guys do other stuff as well, other than just write for the show.
Well, I mean, it's like most writers' room. I mean, I haven't been that many. I've only been in 2. I've only worked on 2 shows. So, it seems like, yeah, it's pretty traditional. I mean, we're certainly aware of where the story's going and the overall outline, kind of, but like any sort of collaborative story thing, everyone's sort of aware of where things are. So you know what comes before and what comes after, what you're going to do. But you don't know which one you're going to do, really, right? So, you're always aware of the whole narrative in a meta sense, but then you don't really know when, you're going to get called onto the field. So you just have to kind of stay aware of all that stuff and be ready to kind of jump in whenever you're needed to jump in.
Like, from the ending of that episode, I'm sure that you must know where it's going after this episode, especially since you're doing episode 7. I was watching this episode, and I was like, oh, Bryan, don't you end this on the cliffhanger, and you did.
Well, I think that's just like part and parcel of streaming.
Oh, yeah.
TV, right? Like, that's kind of the job. I mean, everything ends on a cliffhanger these days. Songs end on cliffhangers these days. So, I just think with so much media being out there and so many reasons people have to tune into something else, I think cliffhangers just become kind of part of the whole experience.
Oh yeah, I figured the way it ended too, and what the title of the next episode is, Jason Todd. I was just like, okay, this is going to be a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's it's funny, like, for people who are aware of the characters, they kind of know what all this stuff means. People who are unaware and just watching it, like, doesn't have any sort of real resonance for them. So it's interesting to see different people from different kind of sides of the viewership interpret the material in different ways.
So what would you say in this episode purely came from you? It wasn't like from the showrunner. It wasn't from your co-writer. What was you?
It's hard. It's because it's such a collaborative process from the beginning. I think it's difficult to kind of draw a red circle around something and say, like, this is me, because everything is based on conversations that the group is having the entire time, and the conversations are led by the showrunner, the producers, and their vision. So, I don't think you get that kind of auteurship. I mean, what is always important to me in my work is kind of the consequences of violence. I think about a lot, so I try to depict that in the work. The idea of friends and chosen families, show up in my work a lot. I guess I believe in the ability of people to find people that they may not be related to, that they can love and trust and come together as family. I mean, that's just sort of like how I look at the world, really. So, so those moments certainly, when I have an opportunity to put that kind of stuff into a story, I do. So, yeah, I think it's more like, there are elements of the story that are similar to elements that are in my work, but everything is a product of the group. In TV, there's this kind of tendency to I guess look for the genius or the breakout or the whatever, like who's going to be the next Chris Carter or Matt Weiner or whatever it is. But it really is a collaborative effort, because you're building on something else. Like someone will say something that'll give you an idea, and you'll say something else, but you'll build on what they started. And so that gets incorporated into it. So, I think it's hard to isolate one thing or another thing, really. But so yeah, some of the thematics carry over.
Is any one character easier to write for you?
No, not really. It's, I mean, every character you write has different challenges, but I don't think there's one that's necessarily easier. It was always fun to write bad guys, especially like, kind of bad guys that can quip and that kind of thing. Like, that's fun, but yeah, as far as like the characters go, no, not really. I don't think there's, because, and this is really just going back to the Marv Wolfman, right? I mean, they all represent something so unique that you don't really double up on the energy. What would be difficult to do, would be to do a story where you have multiple characters, but they're kind of similar, and how do you make them different? How do you really understand them? Like the differences in the characters in Titans are so stark that it's pretty easy to see how they each bring a different flavor and color. But if I was working on something like Law and Order, right, you have to have such an intimate understanding of the nuance of the characters, but even before you start storytelling, because on their surface, they're kind of all the same, you know, like it's a cop and another cop, right? So those are the times when it can be kind of difficult, and you got to make those characters distinctive. You know, I think it's one of the reasons why True Detective works so well is, you know, those two characters are so clearly distinctive that, Pizzolatto was able to write them in ways that, you know, kind of kept them interesting. And so thankfully with the way Wolfman, you know, worked with these characters in the comics, they each access a different part of who you are. So they're kind of all equally as fun and equally as challenging.
Are you guys purely drawing from the comic book runs, or are you throwing in a little Teen Titans Go or regular Teen Titan animated, or?
Well, see, if I answer that, then I might give some things away. So,
oh, okay. Ooh. Heaven forbid, we wouldn't want an exclusive or a scoop or anything.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay employed, so.
True. We want you to stay employed as well.
So he's not coming out and saying Judas contract, but.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. Biblical thing? Is it a biblical thing, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, 30 pieces of silver or something like that.
So I won't even ask about Deathstroke. Moving on.
Who's that? Deathstroke? Deathstroke.
Did you mean Deadpool? Wrong.
Is that Vance?
He would. Last time I talked to him, he wouldn't even confirm we're getting a Nightwing suit. So.
Oh, so I'll leave the booty questions out then.
Yeah, Nightwing. I don't know who that is either. Is it Nightwing? Nightwing. Let me think. Nightwing. I don't know what that is. Oh, does Nightwing work with that Deathstroke guy? Wait a minute. It's a Marvel thing, isn't it? Marvel, right?
Aren't you Deadpool?
Yeah. Oh, wait, Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds. He's great.
Everybody loves Ryan Reynolds.
Those commercials where he's playing the video game. I like them. They're funny.
Well, Phil and I are very, very excited for your Batman and the Outsiders run. So
yes.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it's interesting, you know, like I'm doing things a little differently than I did them in Detective. I mean, I still think it has a lot of the classic kind of Batman-esque elements, but I'm trying to push the form a little bit. You know, I'm trying to challenge what can get done in a monthly Bat book in a different way. You know, I think Tom challenges it in terms of its emotional consequence, its meditative qualities, the philosophy, you know, that stuff. And he pushes the envelope on that. And what I'm doing is there are parts of it that are very literal, and there are parts that are not abstract, but kind of more experiential is what I'll say, you know. And I'm working closely with Dexter Soy. He's doing a great job in the artwork, and the artwork is pushing the story a lot in Batman and the Outsiders. And that was one of the things I wanted to do. Was, you know, work with Dexter, and being such a big fan of his work, I wanted to be able to open up his talent and say, like, hey man, you know, you get these 4 pages to carry these beats. You know, it's, you know, your art's doing the job here. And so I think those things make for an interesting experience, especially for a monthly book. Cause, you don't want to run into the problem of a monthly book just kind of feeling like bog standard comic booky stuff, you know? Especially with Batman, because there's so many Batman books that are out there, that it's easy for them all to kind of blend together if you're not careful. So I think we're doing something sort of interesting, with Outsiders. I use the word interesting because I'm not quite qualified to use the word good, but, I'm hoping it's good, but I'm certain it's interesting.
And I believe you said last time it's not like a traditional team book, like not everyone is going to show up every issue.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to walk away from a major player for too long.
Yeah.
You know, I think the reader needs to be aware of what's going on with the Outsiders every issue. But I also didn't want the book to feel like Scooby-Doo. You know, like I love Scooby-Doo, but that's just not the experience I'm trying to build. And when you have so many characters that have so many layers, you want to be able to use them effectively with resonance rather than just kind of do a shallow skip over who they are. And that requires kind of leaning into part of the group for certain narratives and part of the group for other narratives. And I think that way you get just kind of a richer experience with character. kind of the same lessons I learned from, 90s X-Men comics, right? Because I was a huge fan of the Jim Lee, X-Men stuff.
Right.
And, they would do that where, this would be a couple issues about Gambit. Okay, cool. And you get that story and then you come back and you do a group thing. But, it wasn't always just Cyclops showing up, playing quarterback and a bunch of combined powers. You get him, Gene! And all that. So that'll get old, I think, for people. So yeah, we want to kind of be able to, maybe pick a couple or three or whatever and say, hey, this is going to be about you guys, for these couple of issues. And then we can sort of check back in with the group and see how it's going. That's the kind of the overall experiential structure I'm doing.
Did you get to exclusively pick the team, or did an editor to throw in an extra character? Because it's an interesting team that ended up in the Batman Outsiders run that you're going to do.
Well, to be honest, I didn't really have much of an opinion beyond Cassandra Cain, because that was the reason why I wanted to do it in the first place. So all I said was, you can put anybody on the team you want, but I want Cassandra Cain on it. And they were fine. And then then they brought Black Lightning, due to the Detective Comics story I was doing, and then that seems like a fine thing. Put Black Lightning in there because Black Lightning is certainly a classic Outsiders character. And then and then Duke sort of came along and it made sense. So it was all very organic, but the whole business of it started with me being interested in writing Cassandra Cain. Although I don't really focus on her until the second arc of the book. But when I get there, I get there.
So is that kind of the plan? I mean, I don't want to say Batman's going to take a back seat, but we're going to focus more on the other characters, because I think isn't Batman the only one who has his own books right now?
Well, Batman's involvement is constant in the book for sure, and he has a different relationship to the team than he does with each individual member of the team, right? So the function that Batman takes in the story is sort of different depending on where we are in the narrative. I think that the friendship between Bruce Wayne and Jefferson Pierce is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. That's something I want to develop because Bruce doesn't have a lot of those kinds of friends, and I think he appreciates Jefferson's company because Jefferson isn't so not intimidated, I guess, awestruck by the Batman of it all, mm-hmm. right? Part of the Detective Comics arc was Jefferson realized, oh, you were that kid whose parents got killed. Oh.
He seemed more I won't say curious, how do you, not how do you physically do it, but how morally and everything, how do you do what you do?
Yeah, I think in Detective he was just trying to put together all the facts, right? Mm-hmm. Part of the thing that happens in comics is we're all so familiar with these characters that we sometimes don't engage some of the stuff that's there, right? We don't we're all looking in the forest, we don't see the trees, right? Hmm. And part of it is Bruce Wayne is really famous. He's a famous guy. Yeah. So Jefferson kind of being like, wait, you're Bruce Wayne? Mm-hmm. That guy, he was on the cover of Esquire 2 months ago. He's I got, high school girls in my school that have pictures of him on their phones. That's what Bruce Wayne means to him, right? And so he's kind of reconciling the idea that Bruce could be Batman. And I think Bruce, doesn't get that experience a lot from people, when you're a guy like Bruce Wayne, you don't get to introduce yourself for the first time too many times. A lot of times people carry an inherent opinion about who you are. And because Jefferson is neither intimidated by the Batman stuff or that impressed with the wealth, I think Bruce starts to relate to him in a very specific way. And I always joke with Dexter that whenever they're in the book together, it kind of feels like Miami Vice, because I'm a big Miami Vice fan. So it kind of creeps in, right? You got these two good-looking guys in their tailored coats, having some conversation. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm totally Crockett and Tubbsing right now. So that's an aspect. And then Bruce's relationship to each of the individual characters of the team beyond that is interesting. But what I don't want the book to feel is Batman's not getting involved directly in a thing because reasons, right? Because you'll smell that. You'll feel mm-hmm. that. So I always have to make sure there's a real strategic reason why Bruce isn't just the tip of the spear on things all the time. So it can feel organic and all of that. But he's a constant presence in the book for sure.
So is like the theme, like we almost see the theme through Jefferson's eyes because he's like the everyman dropped in the Batman's world.
Well, I think you're going to see the initiative, and I look at the Outsiders as more of an initiative than a team.
Okay.
Like this is something that Bruce is putting together for a specific purpose because he wants to have a kind of a special ops team of his on the field to do things that are specifically and uniquely important to him and his world, right? So, the perspective on it, I think, will shift and change, as the stories go on, right? Like, the first arc, we're really just kind of laying down the rhythms and I guess the structure kind of how this thing is going to work within the fiction itself. So they're kind of learning on the fly, right? It's a high stakes story. A lot of stuff is happening, but they're still kind of learning how they're dealing with it as a team on the fly. But I think, we'll explore that world through different characters' POVs, depending on, kind of what the narrative requirements are. It's not I don't look at it like a television show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something where like, you've got a main character and then you have supporting characters, but the supporting characters, they're really just there to, kind of provide some B and C plot stuff for the main character. No, I don't know who the main character of this book is. Sometimes it'll be Batman. Sometimes it'll be Jeff. Sometimes it'll be Duke. Sometimes it'll be Cassie, but it'll always involve all of the players. But yeah, the point of view will probably shift based on, whatever story we're telling.
I like that.
Me too. I can't wait. Just a few more weeks.
It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's
cool.
like
it's fun. It's really weird, honestly, to, in 2017 I was coming off of Evil Dead, and then 2018 I'm writing like Detective Comics Titans and like a Batman one. So it's a little weird. Sometimes people will ask me questions about Batman. I'm like, why is everyone asking me a question about Batman today? Oh, that's right, because I write Batman.
You're like the new Batman. You're the Batman guy. The current one.
That's a weird thing, right? That's a weird thing to get used to because like some days I'll just I haven't had the coffee yet or the coffee hasn't kicked in, and I'm like, why is everyone asking me questions about Batman? And then like, oh, that's right. That's okay. That totally makes sense that people would actually care what I had to say about Batman.
Because you're like half of what would Batman say? It's like you, Tom King.
Yeah, it's weird. I look at those guys like there's Tom, Scott, James. Those are those guys, and I write books and I try to make them as good as I can, but yeah, I don't really self-identify the same way. I was like at Comic-Con, I was on a panel with like Scott and Tom and Joel. And was James there? I'm not sure James was there. No, but Peter Tomasi was there, right? And I was like, why am I here? Like, okay, I'm here, I'll be here, but why am I here? And I was joking with Joel, like, I don't know why I'm sitting in this chair. So, it's a fun time. And I'm really excited for people to get their hands on the book.
Awesome, man. I mean, Batman's going to be getting more attention because, Detective Comics 1000's coming up. Next year, the 80th anniversary.
That's right.
It's always an anniversary, it feels like now, though.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with. Well, one, it makes me feel old because it feels like everything is at the 100th or the 1000th or the whatever, and I'm like, hey, I still play video games. Stop assaulting me with these 100-year anniversary milestones. Thank you. I reserve the right to think like a 16-year-old when it serves me. So,
I know.
Time is a social construct, my friend. It's okay.
Time is a flat circle.
I always complain about the renumbering, but maybe it's good. Yeah, I do feel old because it's like, oh, Detective 1000's coming. I'm like, I remember Detective 600.
Come on, we all know they kind of cheated that, but we'll give it to them.
Yeah, it's weird watching all the movies you grew up with get remade, right?
Oh yeah.
Remastered.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. That's a weird thing. I'm the old guy. Like, you don't know what RoboCop is really supposed to be. I've turned into that person. And it's weird too. Like cause I still watch like movies from the 80s, late 70s. I mean, I was barely born in the late 70s, so most of my cinematic knowledge is from the 80s. And I'll watch them compared to the pace and style of modern movies. And I'm like, oh, this probably looks like a black and white film to high school kids. You know, like if I try to get them to watch like Beverly Hills Cop or something, you know, it'll feel like they're watching an old John Ford movie and they're like 13 years old. So it's weird being at a place where you're like in the middle of that cultural cyclical shift, right? Where you're on the edge of a generation that only remembers Lady Gaga and has no idea who Madonna is.
Yeah.
Like we're almost there, you know? Like we're like 4 years away from people being like, Madonna, who's that? No, Lady Gaga did all that. Yeah. So it's weird. It's a weird part.
I mean, we're getting to the point. I mean, my kid's 5. I'm just waiting for the day. What's a VCR?
You mean what's a Blu-ray player at this point?
Well, we still have that, so.
Just barely. Digital's going to be everything. They don't want you to have physical media.
Like, Father, tell me of this thing called disc.
I know. It's like, wait, you had to put something in a machine to watch a movie? What? You don't just hit a button? What?
I believe what they did was they stored their media on these discs.
At big cabinets.
Oh.
But why would they store the media on discs when they could just have a brain implant? Oh. They hadn't.
He and Charlie would get along so well. He doesn't even know.
Psionic download. Yeah, I know.
Like, why do they run when they can just be renewed?
They didn't just get, why would they run when they could just get in their floating chairs, Father?
Yeah, you know, they didn't have teleportation devices? Well, back then, to them, it was the stuff of dreams.
Your cars touch the ground? What?
You had a car?
That didn't drive itself? Yeah.
It's funny, I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2, because that's the game I sneak away and play when I have a little bit of free time. And, you know, it takes place in like 1891 or something, right? And I think, you think about that, like 1891 sounds like, you know, the Cenozoic period or something, right? Like you hear that and it was like, oh yeah, wasn't there like pterodactyls back then? Like what was going on with that, right? And then you think, you know, and I think about 1891, I think about how, if you think about America, 1891, you know, you're in Old West land, right? Now it's not the oldest of Old West, but you know, you still got the small towns and the gunslingers and, you know, the steam train, you know, as it were, right? You still have enough of that, that going on. But if you think about Britain in 1891, and I mean, you're talking about like cutting edge, like, you know, kind of progressive philosophical thought kind of coming out of London, right? You're talking about like the birth of Aleister Crowley is around then, right? I think he might have been already born by 1891. I think he was born like 1880 or something like that. But, you know, so that's happening, right? At the same time that like the Old West was happening, folks like Crowley were happening in Great Britain. And then you think, well, if you were 10 years old in 1891, it stands to reason that you probably saw the rise of Hitler before you died.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you think about how much the world changed for that person. You know, that person that remembers when it was horses. You remember horses. But then in like 1938, you know, you start edging into the automobile, right? And how that all works. It's just massive, massive changes. So think about, you know, people living now. And I don't think we really think about the incredible evolutionary step the internet is.
Oh, yeah, because everyone's in step with each other now because of the internet. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, back in 1891, you didn't know what anyone was doing across the ocean.
It's like literally reformatting our brains. It's
Mm-hmm.
changing the way we socialize. It's destroying certain pleasure center pathways in our brain and erecting a bunch of other ones. You know, it's this massive thing. Like the internet in a way is kind of like the monolith in 2001. We just don't know it yet.
It should be bringing world peace, but it might be doing the exact opposite.
Trolls gotta eat, man. Trolls gotta eat.
It's funny. Like there's no real natural example of higher intelligence bringing anything more peaceful out of a species. Like this idea that the more intelligent we become, the the more peaceful we become is sort of a myth we're holding on to.
Yeah, but
it doesn't.
Are we getting smarter? Because is technology? Is technology makes things easier, or people not having to use their brain capacity as much?
I honestly think so. I believe that fiscal social mobility is the canary in the birdcage of human development, meaning the ability of a person to shift their class via hard work is the first thing that changes, that falls apart as society starts to split. You start to get into like almost a feudal sort of system, right, of economics. And I think social mobility is a little difficult now. I mean, you have your outliers and people can certainly do it, but it's harder now than it used to be. It used to be a guarantee that the second generation would do better than the first. And it was almost a guarantee the second generation would do better than the first if they did the same stuff as the first, right? Mm-hmm. Worked at the same place, all that stuff. So you can see how social mobility is shifting and changing. And it's based directly on, I think, how people can interpret and react to the environment that we're building. But I do think that people are getting more, I think the development of intelligence within the individual is getting more efficient, but it's not getting more shared. So we're sort of looking at a society where 15% of the society gets educated and 85% of the society works for that 15%. Like, I think that might be kind of where we're headed in a way, right?
Yeah. It's getting, I don't know if it's even 15%.
Well, yeah, it's the kind of like, think about like fluency, think about how important it is for a kid to know how to use Windows, how to think in Windows, how to read a phone screen and instinctively know how to use it, right?
Oh yeah. Like my son's in kindergarten. They already have them in computer class learning computers and iPads.
So if the kid isn't able to get that fluency because it's not being taught to them in school, and they also can't afford the devices at home, they're headed into the world at a deficit.
Yeah.
From simply not being able to interpret the world as easy as someone else could. They like a person raised in how to use that stuff can look at a touch screen and kind of feel their way through it. Mm-hmm. But if you've never really dealt with them or haven't dealt with them that much, then you're operating at a disadvantage. Like you don't really know how that thing works. Right? So yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think we're in the middle of a lot of massive changes that I think will have a drastic effect on what human society sort of looks like in the future. A lot of the things that we, think about just won't even like it like a cassette will be an abstraction to your grandkids. Right? You'll spend 20 minutes trying to explain to them what a cassette was. What? I don't get it. So you could play it, but then you couldn't just go to the next part. You had to rewind it. Like, why'd you have to rewind it?
You had to flip it over.
Yeah.
Lilith, look at him steering us away from the tough questions.
Oh, sorry, I was pontificating.
That's okay. No.
I spent a lot of time in my head.
All right, here's a question. Maybe you can give us this exclusive. Okay, Titans, going back to Titans, they've already said it's renewed for a second season. Has there been any talk of bringing back Bryan Edward Hill to write for season 2 of Titans?
Oh, yeah, I think I can confirm that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm working on season 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you just had to write the little headed, you were saying you wrote these episodes so long ago. So, okay, so you are working on season 2 then?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, can you say how many episodes?
I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
To be totally honest, I don't know. So I wouldn't even hazard a guess, honestly. Streaming is weird. Streaming is you kind of take it as you get it. So, I wouldn't say, because I don't know.
Okay.
Less than 100.
All right. We lost Lowell for a second. She should be back, but she wants me to ask you, which medium is easier for you to write in, comics or screenplays?
Oh, well, at the macro level, writing is writing. But, I think it depends, they're two very different things on the ground, because screenwriting, you employ a temporal economy, meaning if one page is a minute, you want to get through the scene as quickly as possible. You want to come in as late as you possibly can and leave as early as you can, which is also a thing you can do in comics. You kind of want to do in comics as well. The difference is the economy in comics is page space. It's a different kind of economy. So like in a comic book, you can do bold transitions that are harder to pull off in cinema. You can use voiceover in a way that's not intrusive, that's harder to pull off in cinema. But in a screenplay, you don't have to think about the panel count. You can write a scene without thinking about how many shots it will be, right? And that can change anything. Like in a screenplay, you got a 5-page dialogue scene. Well, you can shoot it in a master if you want. Standard procedure would be shoot it in the master and then punch in and get your close-ups and then cut it all together, right? When a comic book, you're editing the movie while you're writing the movie in a way because you're breaking down panels. So, my draft has to indicate kind of where the 2-shot is, where the close-up is. I'm blocking the actors through the space, in the script. And then the penciler's also doing their own version of that when they draw it. I mean, I don't say, well, you have to do exactly what I said. No, I mean, I try to give as much information as I can so that the, penciler doesn't feel, like they're kind of flying blind. But I also don't like to hold people to the specificity of what I've written in the script. So, I'm essentially doing like a shooting thing. Like it's sort of like a shooting draft in a way. So it's weird. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. For me, comics is still a little more intellectual than screenwriting is. I mean, I have outlines and all that for each, but in screenwriting, it's easier for me to get into the flow state because I've written a lot of script. So I just kind of go, put the music on and go. In comics, because I'm always breaking down every page into an amount of images, I never really get out of my intellectual space.
Okay.
You're sort of always, at least I am still, because I don't think in comics yet. Like I work with Warren Ellis. Warren thinks in comics. So a lot of that is just second nature to him. I imagine Scott thinks in comics by now. Tom probably as well. I do not. I end up having to sort of adapt what's in my head to a comic book script every time. Okay. So, that's a unique challenge that comic book writing has. So I guess harder, I don't know, but that's like the unique challenge of writing a comic book for me, at least.
I guess there's probably strengths and weaknesses to both, but I just thought maybe with the comics and maybe you're a little more comfortable because most of it, I mean, you have to work with the art team, but most of that is coming from you. But with like a television show, there's so many moving parts and different people involved. And
well, the good thing about having, a showrunner and producers is you're allowed to just write the script.
Okay.
The way you want to write the script. And you got to get notes and all of that stuff. But then you have people above you in the process that you trust to manage logistics. And to give you, just give you the straight cookie about, well, we can do this, but we can't do that. Or we can do this, so, I really trust my showrunner and my producers to, kind of rein it all in, so I don't really think about logistics really. I just kind of write and then other people give me those notes and then I react to that and then I put things back in. It's important whatever paradigm you have, whether it's a TV room or you're working a screenplay or you're working with a editor in a comic book, to kind of trust your folks to help you, get to where you want to go. Like I got a note today about one of the books I'm working on. I don't want to say which one. But I got a note today in the book and I didn't feel the note, right? I read it and I understood it, but I didn't feel it emotionally. Like I didn't sink into it. And I told them like, okay, well I could do it, but, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. But they're just really certain that like, no, this is going to help you get to where you want to go in a better way. So I'm just going to execute it because I just trust that they know, right? Like they have a perspective on it that I don't have. They wouldn't want to make the story worse. So I'll just find the best way I can execute the note and then execute it to the best of my ability. And they're likely right. I'm just getting slower to seeing it than they are right now. Right. So yeah, you just trust everyone in the process.
Okay. All right. So basically The two are different, but they both have their ups and downs.
Yeah, I've been screenwriting longer than I've been writing comics, so that's probably part of my comfort level there.
Okay. Yeah.
So like anything, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. I still feel a little like I'm figuring out my style, my way, as it were, in comics. I don't think I've landed on it yet. I think I'm still evolving, and I think I'm evolving at a rapid pace.
I mean, it's the story. I know your detective arc. It read, like I said, it's seamless. It wasn't like, oh, this is some new guy writing Batman. It seemed like, classic Batman who I love. And
well, I've been reading comics a lot since I was a kid. And,
yeah.
I'd worked on Postal for a while before I jumped into detective. So I'd done like 2 years of books, averaging 1 to 2 books a month for a couple years before I started writing detective. I certainly couldn't have started detective at the same time I started Postal. I needed those 2 years of Postal to feel my way around the form. In fact, if you read that story, right, you see me evolve as a comic writer over the course of those 22 issues.
Mm-hmm.
You can see like, oh, he got more confident here because he's now starting to do this stuff, starting to do that stuff, It's like watching a TV show and like the first season of the X-Files when they didn't really know what the X-Files was yet. Like, I think this is the thing. And they did, and they had Scully in like clothes that were like 4 sizes too big, and that was weird. She sort of looked like David Byrne from Talking Heads for a little bit. and that was weird. And she had like a weird haircut. And then, because you remember when Scully was like the internal affairs like rat that was ratting on Mulder? Like that was a thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
kind of. Yeah.
It started off where she was duplicitous and she was like ratting him out in written reports at the end of every episode. So that dynamic that went away, right? So that's what Postal's like. You read like the first 6 issues, you're like, okay, he's getting there. And then I think when you read, I think like the last 2 issues of the second arc, you start to see that. I start to lock into it a little bit more.
But yeah, no, I was just saying, I mean, maybe it's sometimes it's outside your comfort level, but I mean, your detective run was great. Like me and Lil said, we can't wait for Batman and the Outsiders.
Well, thank you. I'm very good at faking the ability to do something. That's been one of my superpowers since I was a little boy. So I'm very good at looking competent. I'm excellent at looking competent. And then I just hope that no one tests the water's edge of my competency.
But yeah, that's what a lot of people do. Fake it till you make it. But
yeah,
I'm guessing Lilith isn't coming back. But before I let you go, this was episode 5 of Titans Together. Next episode is Jason Todd, and then you wrote for episode 7, Asylum. Is there anything you can tease us about that?
No.
I want to work on season 2. I can't let anything out of the back.
There's no, there's not. I can give you
that good, huh?
Yeah, I give you a nuanced and political answer, or I could just be honest. No, can't say anything.
I understand. But I'm just saying, so there's so much good stuff in there. You're like, I can't say a word about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the final episodes. So I've seen early cuts, but I haven't seen any of the final stuff. But yeah, I'm really proud of what we were able to do this season. I think this is the first time I ever worked on the first season of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I did Evil Dead. It had been cooking for 2 years, and then before then, it had been movies, right? So, I mean, Bruce Campbell can just do Ash stuff, and it will kind of work. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not building kind of everything from the ground up. With Titans, yeah, I mean, we have the cartoon and the Marv books and, the books afterwards and Jeff's, work and all that stuff. But as a live action series, kind of the first time. So it was, really interesting to be part of that, to be part of the first season of a thing. I think a lot of people that work in television may never get that experience. They might always work on something that's already, kind of going,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really, really proud of what we were able to accomplish. And, I think we've got some cool moments lined up for fans.
Yeah, I was a little nervous and excited. I was like, oh, Dick Grayson is my favorite character. I hope this goes well. And we talked about how a lot of shows, their first seasons, seems like they're trying to find their footing or direction. Seems like there was a plan from day one on Titans, and it's good.
Well, Brenton is really great to work with. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
And it's hard to act that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's
like you like some people can't like just pull off that the confident, skilled guy, but
we have these characters, especially the Gotham characters, that always have to have gears turning when you look into their eyes, right? Like, you never want to look into Bruce Wayne or Dick Grayson's eyes, even Alfred's eyes, and not see the gears turning in some way, and you want people wondering, what is a turning, around in that mind. And you can't teach an actor how to do that. An actor either has that quality or they don't. It's like trying to teach someone's soul, right? You're like, cut. Can you put more soul in it? Like, that's a bad direction. That's something you have to manage in casting, rather than directing. And David Rappaport is a great casting guy. And so he does phenomenal work across all the Berlanti shows. So, Brenton has those qualities.
Yeah, he seems to be pulling off the character great, because it seems like he has a darker edge in this show, but it's like you don't want to go Bruce Wayne, and he seems to be like riding that line, like excellent. Like I said, Dick Grayson's like my favorite character, and I don't have complaints. He's my favorite part of the show.
Yeah. It was so cool to be up there and see him in the suit and know that you're a part of that. And it's a pretty neat little moment. And we're lucky, like everyone on the show is cool and great to be around. And that's fun, because it's not always like that in Hollywood. Without naming names, I have been in situations, not Evil Dead was great too, but I've been in certain situations when you're working with people who may be incredibly talented, but you just do not want to be around them. You just don't want to have that conversation, right? But no one on this is like that, and that makes it a lot of fun to work on. And I think some of that fun translates onto screen.
Like I said, I can't wait to see every episode this week. It's not like the Netflix where you get into the whole season. It's like, once a week, and then you give us a cliffhanger every week.
Well, my good friends Richard Haddam and Jeff Thomas wrote the next episode, I believe, and they are really talented writers. So fans are in for a treat watching theirs.
And then episode 7 is you again, and
then like a bad penny, I always turn up.
Oh no! Like I said, this episode is great. I might have to bug you again. I might watch episode 7 and be like, this is the one I should have talked to him about.
Yeah, I think 7 is cool, man.
Hey, Asylum. It's called Asylum. It's got to be interesting, especially after what we saw this episode.
Yeah. And that's really a lot of credit that goes to Greg and Jeff and Greg Walker, Akiva Goldsman, Jeff Johns, for wanting to make sure that every episode was interesting. That every episode was cool, that we didn't lay it up ever. And it was challenging to live up to that standard, but I think the results of that standard show in a first season that covers more ground than I think a lot of shows do.
Oh yeah, there's a lot packed into these, because like any of the.
I apologize if you can hear that music downstairs. I have no idea. I live in a very metropolitan area.
No, I think we're good. I can't hear it. So
there's like a concert happening outside the window, and I just don't know what.
That's all right. I'm surprised you haven't heard a car drive past my house.
Right.
But I love the stuff. Any of these Titans, I would watch a solo series on them. It's getting a lot for these episodes.
Yeah, it's watching, and I don't know the decision-making process, because that's all way above my pay grade, but watching the streaming service build is really fascinating. And thinking about the possibilities, because it comes straight from Warner Brothers. there are a lot of creative possibilities there that would be really interesting to explore. And that's where I got to give credit to Jeff, for, kind of spearheading the vision of that thing. I mean, what he's able to do just through sheer force of will is impressive. And he's got some great stuff coming too. Swamp Thing is run by a good friend of mine and mentor, Mark Verheiden, and that's going to be a great show. And, there's a lot of stuff on the way. I think it's going to be really, really cool. So fans of the service are going to get a lot, I think, for their money over the next couple years.
Awesome. All right. I will let you go. Thank you for your time, sir. But before you leave,
thank you for having me. Yeah,
two pieces of business. One, Lilith will kill me if I don't get you on recording saying, this is Bryan Edward Hill, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Oh, sure. You ready?
Yes.
This is Bryan Edward Hill, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Yes. Thank you, sir. All right. And we talked Batman and the Outsiders coming out. Is there anything else you want to promote?
Oh, let's see. I got American Carnage that comes out this month, November 20th. I've got Killmonger coming from Marvel. I think the first issue of that comes out this month or December, I think. So that is on the way.
That's right. I did hear about that. Yes.
My Kiss Blood and Stardust series for Dynamite is trucking along. I think we've got the second issue coming soon. So if you want to see me do heavy metal occultism in 1970s Los Angeles, that's the party for you. Just follow me on Twitter, at Bryan Edward Hill. I'm sure I'm forgetting some things I should mention, and I'll remember and mention them there. But yeah, that's kind of me. So, for those who have seen Titans, thank you so much for supporting the show. For those that are interested in signing up and watching it, follow that instinct, because there's cool content coming. And, if you're listening to Capes and Lunatics, keep listening, because this is a great podcast about great stuff.
Oh yeah, and we're definitely be talking about Titans again. We'll basically talk about it every week.
Right on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the time. I mean, with all the comic books you're rating, and now you've confirmed your rating on season 2 of Titans. I don't know where you get the time to sleep, let alone talk to us.
Sleep? What's that? Who does that?
I don't. I barely get sleep. I can imagine you.
I don't know what that is. I meditate a little bit. Don't get sleep though.
No, you're like, I sleep a whole 15 minutes a night.
Yeah, like a ninja. Like I sleep 10 minutes for a month, and then I just make it work.
I rate while I sleep.
Right on. All right, well, thanks for having me so much.
Oh, thank you. Once again, thank you for your time. It's always great talking to you.
Right on. Well, enjoy your weekend. I'll talk soon.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everyone. That was the great Bryan Edward Hill. As great a guy as he sounded on the podcast. Like I said, this is the second time I got to talk to him. Like I said, 2 episodes from now, episode 7 of Titans of season 1. It's called Asylum, and Brian's talking with. Well, Brian wrote on that, so maybe we'll get him back. We'll see what his schedule's like. As you heard, he's a busy man. What do you think of Titans? When you read Batman and the Outsiders, send your thoughts on that. Also, Capes and Lunatics at gmail.com, Facebook.com/Capes and Lunatics, at Capes Lunatics on Twitter, Capes and Lunatics on Instagram, and the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-Capes. And once again, thank you, Bryan Edward Hill. And join us next time, everyone. It was me and Lilith this time. We have been the Capes, ampersand, as Charlie would say, the Lunatics. And join us next time. Good night.